Today is Thursday. It is April 28th, 2022. Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show. We have a full show for you this morning. We'll be joined in the On the Clock segment with Nina Turner and Professor Harvey Kaye, discussing not only the Economic Bill of Rights, but also Nina Turner's run for the 11th Congressional District there in Ohio. We're excited about that conversation. We'll be joined by DJ Exclusive, Rebecca Azor. Dr. Carl Mack is out this week as he is preparing and diligently working on Black Heritage Days 5, Black Heritage Days 5, which is a 366-day Black women history calendar, along with Black Heritage Days 6, which is a Black sports history calendar, 366 days of Black history as it pertains to sports. And as always, we're going to start our morning this morning with Black history provided by Dr. Mack and Google. Hey, Google, what happened today in Black history?
On April 28, 1971, Samuel L. Gravely became the first Black admiral in United States military history. Gravely was born on June 4, 1922, in Richmond, Virginia. He was the first Black officer to command a United States Navy ship, and the first to achieve the rank of captain. The following year, he became the first Black person to command a combat ship, the USS Falgout. During the Vietnam War, he was assigned commander of the USS Tausig, thus becoming the first Black man to command a U.S. Navy ship in combat. Adapted from Black Heritage Day 4 calendar by author, lecturer, and civil rights activist Dr. Carl Mack.
And I absolutely want to encourage you to go to blackheritagedays.com and get a copy of the calendar that we read from every morning. Dr. Carl Mack is diligently working on the rest of the calendars, and it has been such a blessing to this show to be able to ground and root everything that we do each day through the lens of Black history. I want to begin this morning with more on what's happening in Washington, D.C. While the rest of us around the country are trying to live normal lives, there's an entire cabal of right-wing fascists who are planning a coup, who are actually enacting a coup. Since January 6th, the Republican Party has made it known that they have no intention of abiding by the peaceful transfer of power or even the Constitution of the United States. We are at a stage in decline in the United States of America, where half of the political institutions in this country have no regard for the political institutions. They have no regard for voting. They have no regard for voting rights. And in fact, they have no regard for each other as they begin to eat each other alive on the right, because they have not yet decided exactly how far they want to go. What do I mean? Kevin McCarthy, the House Minority Leader, who on January 6th and around surrounding January 6th was clear, absolutely clear, that Donald Trump was responsible. And now that these audio recordings have leaked, the Republican Party, Fox News, and the conservative infrastructure, they are leaning into Kevin McCarthy because he is not dedicated to Donald Trump enough. I want to jog your memory and play a couple of clips of Kevin McCarthy in his own words so that you can understand and hear why it is people like Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Matt Gaetz are now coming after him full-throated. And he is, in fact, not enough for the fascists in the Republican Party. Let's take a listen into Kevin McCarthy.
Details of Republican leader Kevin McCarthy's conversations in the days after January 6th were reported by Jonathan Martin and Alexander Burns of the New York Times in their upcoming book, This Will Not Pass. McCarthy, according to the book, was so upset with Trump's behavior, he told fellow Republicans, quote, "I've had it with this guy." McCarthy flatly denied the reporting, tweeting, quote, "The New York Times reporting on me is totally false and wrong." And the Republican leader's spokesperson told the Times, quote, "McCarthy never said he'd call Trump to say he should resign." But overnight, the Times reporters released audio showing McCarthy did exactly that.
What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to call him.
This, according to the Times reporters, was during a phone call with House Republicans hosted by Liz Cheney just days after the attack on the Capitol.
Are you hearing that he might resign? Is there any reason to think that might happen?
I've had some few discussions. My gut tells me no. I'm seriously thinking of having that conversation with him tonight. I haven't talked to him in a couple days. From what I know of him, I mean, you guys all know him too. Do you think he'd ever back away? But
McCarthy goes on to say he believed Trump would be impeached and possibly even removed from office by the Senate.
The only discussion I would have with him is that I think this will pass, and it would be my recommendation we should resign. That would be my take, but I don't think he would take it, but I don't know.
But weeks later, McCarthy's criticism of Trump had evaporated. He visited the former president at Mar-a-Lago just 3 weeks after January 6th.
Now, to be sure, Kevin McCarthy came on board with the rest of the Republican Party, who after January 6th, the Republican Party stated very clearly in a statement that the actions of January 6th fell within the acceptable parameters of political debate. I want to say that every day between now and the election, because the entirety of the GOP, the Republican Party, looked at January 6th and said that, you know what, this is okay for American democracy. And so Kevin McCarthy, whose initial reaction was rather appropriate. It was appropriate for him to be concerned that the president of the United States was fomenting an insurrection in real time. And you can see as he was talking with Liz Cheney, who I am not a fan of. She is the daughter of Dick Cheney, who is the warmonger in chief and has divided and disrupted this global order for the foreseeable future. So I am not a fan of Liz Cheney. However, we are in such a bad situation in this country where Liz Cheney is actually the good person in this conversation. And as Kevin McCarthy was talking to her, perhaps he was simply just trying to impress her and make it seem as though he had not gone full Trumper. But clearly, he backtracked and has gone full Trumper, but that's not enough for Tucker Carlson or Matt Gaetz. I want you to listen to these clips. The first clip is of Tucker Carlson basically saying that Kevin McCarthy, who backed away from the good thing, Kevin McCarthy, who backed away from the right thing, which was to preserve this democracy, that's not enough for him to back away and to fall in line with Donald Trump. He should never have questioned Donald Trump to begin with. Let's take a listen to Tucker Carlson.
Kevin McCarthy of California told his close friend Liz Cheney that he hoped the social media companies would censor more conservative Republicans in Congress. Donald Trump, the sitting president, had already been silenced by those companies, but McCarthy wanted the tech oligarchs to do more, to force disobedient lawmakers off the internet. Quote, can't they take their Twitter accounts away too? Those are the tape-recorded words of Congressman Kevin McCarthy, a man who in private turns out sounds like an MSNBC contributor. And yet, unless conservatives get their act together right away, Kevin McCarthy or one of his highly liberal allies like Elise Stefanik is very likely to be Speaker of the House in January. That would mean we will have a Republican Congress led by a puppet of the Democratic Party. So you wouldn't know any of this.
You wouldn't know any of this if you were watching Fox News, that Tucker Carlson is an apparatchik. But I want to move to the clip that Tucker Carlson is referencing. He's referencing the newest audio where Kevin McCarthy, in response to January 6th, was questioning whether or not Twitter could take away those accounts. Let's take a listen in.
Not seeing that anywhere. And there's an issue with Alabama. Barry Moore has said some things today even that we should look at, honestly.
What did Barry say today?
All right, so he deleted his personal Twitter account, but Jamie Dupree with the Atlanta Journal got screenshot. He said about 22 hours ago, wow, we have more arrests for stealing a podium on January 6th than we do for stealing an election on November the 3rd. Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Detroit would be places I recommend you start. There's video evidence of these crimes as well. Hashtag election integrity matters. And then Moore also made this tweet on Saturday night as the U.S. Capitol Police officer who shot and killed a woman as he tried to get into the lobby. So he tweeted at Marjorie Greene and at NARAL, I understand it was a black police officer that shot the white female veteran. You know, that doesn't fit the narrative.
Ow. Oh, man.
This is what we have to confront with this.
Can't they take their Twitter accounts away too?
Can't they take their Twitter accounts away too?
Rachel Maddow slid in there at the last second to to repeat it, but can't you take their Twitter away accounts too? I want to give context. This is a broader conversation. The more we dig into this, it gets broader and broader because now we're on the precipice of Elon Musk taking the full reins at Twitter and reinstating people like Donald Trump and opening the floodgates. We see the people who are celebrating the purchase of Twitter by Elon Musk the most are the right-wing apparatchiks who are here to do the bidding of Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. There's no question about that. And so as this conversation broadens, we have to understand that this is a competition between what remains of the Republican Party. What remains of the Republican Party are people like Liz Cheney, who, again, is no hero. Make no mistake. I don't care what network puts her up. Liz Cheney is not a hero, except in this instance, she is like the only Republican who actually cares enough about democracy to say that they're not going to put Donald Trump over the Constitution. I will take Liz Cheney any day. Give me someone who will not give us Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin over the Constitution, and I'll say something kind about her. Liz Cheney is good like a broken clock is right twice a day. But that is not enough in the Republican Party for people like Kevin McCarthy to have allies like Liz Cheney. He backs away because he knows who actually runs the Republican Party, and it is Donald Trump's ego. I want us to play this next clip. It is of Representative Maria Salazar of Florida. She comes to the defense of House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, saying, well, he changed his mind. And as you listen to this clip, the choices that are on the table for the Republican Party is a choice between American democracy and the Constitution and subservience to Donald Trump. Let's listen to Maria Salazar.
We asked Leader McCarthy what he said on January 6th, and they lied to us. And then there's audio.
You know, they lied. People changed their mind. Things happened. But I'm not saying that January 6th what happened was despicable. You cannot be storming any buildings, much less the Capitol. But then why don't we move forward? And why don't we start thinking what's happening right now? But no, the media doesn't want to do that because it's not convenient. It doesn't produce headlines.
So did you listen to the McCarthy audio that was released?
Sure I did.
And what was your response as an American?
My response was that it was edited. You see, I know the art of editing. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure in what context. But what I'm saying to you is that it's not a matter of trying to find out what happened or what he said. It's the whole story. Right. Don't you guys see it, what you guys are doing?
We asked the Dems the same question.
You know, it's like the history will judge the news organizations 100 years from now, and we'll say, we're not doing our job.
History is going to judge the news organizations for allowing her to finish that sentence unchallenged. She knows editing. I digress. The story now is this, that there is a civil war in the Republican Party. And to be honest with you, the likes of Liz Cheney and Kevin McCarthy, they are losing because Donald Trump and his ego has the full backing of Fox News, Tucker Carlson, and even Vladimir Putin. I want to play one more clip from Tucker Carlson, and this one includes Matt Gaetz, who himself is embroiled in a scandal in the 1st Congressional District of Florida dealing with underage sex allegations. That doesn't stop him from going on Fox News on a regular basis to foment further disruptions in our democracy. Let's take a listen in to Matt Gaetz.
Violence. What do you make of this?
Well, I was just describing the facts. You had a group of people who were going to try to join with Democrats to impeach President Trump, and that is precisely what has played out. You mentioned he's in line to be Speaker. I mean, I don't know that Kevin McCarthy's in line to be Speaker. I don't know if the guy could get an account on Truth Social at this point based on the inconsistency between the recordings and what he says to us. And it is debasing for Republicans to give this guy a standing ovation after he smears Trump, lies to the country, and then tries to sick big tech and the DOJ on members of Congress whose views he doesn't agree with and whose factual representations are ultimately borne out. And the crazy thing about this, Tucker, is that it was all done for the sake of protecting Liz Cheney. I mean, at the time, I was protecting President Trump from impeachment, and Kevin McCarthy was protecting Liz Cheney from criticism. And now she is owning them with their own words. And maybe Liz Cheney has done us a favor because now finally you don't have to be a lobbyist with a $5,000 check to know what Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise really think. You know, I was upfront about the fact that I was going to politically oppose Liz Cheney. I went to Wyoming. I made my case there. This notion that you can have these sniveling calls and try to foment action against Republicans by big tech and the DOJ is not fitting of leadership.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, you can represent Republican voters if you're personally annoyed with Trump. Okay. But you cannot represent Republican leaders if you're calling on big tech to censor voices who criticize you, and if you're accusing people who criticize you of committing an illegal act of violence, as Steve Scalise did. Now,
Steve Scalise is I want to go off script for a second, because I just want to make sure people understand who Steve Scalise is. If you look up Steve Scalise's record as it pertains to racism and white supremacy, you will understand that he is perfectly in line with the Republican Party. There's no question about whether or not Steve Scalise is a dedicated, dutiful, racist Republican. There's just no question about it. However, that's not enough. The racism is not enough. The xenophobia is not enough. The homophobia, the transphobia is not enough if you do not have pure, unadulterated allegiance to Donald Trump and this movement that actually is it's a little bit bigger than Donald Trump, except for one thing. Donald Trump's ego is the size of the universe. But there is a international pan-reactionary movement that is bigger than Donald Trump that they are more loyal to. The Republican Party, the only institution that the Republican Party is more loyal to than Donald Trump, is the global reactionary movement that includes the likes of Vladimir Putin. That is it. But as it pertains to domestic politics in the United States of America, if you do anything to challenge Donald Trump, who lost, who never should have won in the first place, who, quite frankly, is the clarion call of white mediocrity, if you do not serve him, well, you are an enemy of the Republican Party. And this is the party that has completely taken over one half of the political institutions in this country. This is why we can not only not make progress, this is why we're going backwards with legislation all around the country that is aimed at marginalizing even more people, making sure that even fewer people can vote, and making sure that even if you vote, you don't really have a district to vote in, because they've been cracking black districts all over this country. Just look at the state of Florida, and we'll be talking about that more as the weeks go on. I want to move on really quickly with the time that we have left with some chilling news. 3 out of 4 kids in the United States have had COVID-19, the CDC is estimating. Now, this comes on the heels of Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is saying that the U.S. is now out of the pandemic phase. And this is a difficult thing to swallow when you consider just yesterday, nearly 700 people died of COVID-19. And we have a rolling 7-day average of about 350 people who are dying on a daily basis from this pandemic. It is very difficult when you have 3 out of 4 children who have been infected with COVID-19, and we still don't know the effects, the full effects of long-term COVID. Yet Dr. Fauci says that we're out of the pandemic phase. We've liked him here to this point. Let's play this clip now.
How close are we to the end of this pandemic?
Well, that's an unanswerable question for the following reason. And I don't want to be evasive about it, but let me tell you why I'm giving you that answer, Judy. We are certainly right now in this country out of the pandemic phase. Namely, we don't have 900,000 new infections a day and tens and tens and tens of thousands of hospitalizations and thousands of deaths. We are at a low level right now. So if you're saying, are we out of the pandemic phase in this country? We are. What we hope to do, I don't believe, and I've spoken about this widely, we're not going to eradicate this virus. If we can keep that level very low and intermittently vaccinate people, and I don't know how often that would have to be, Judy. That might be every year, that might be longer, in order to keep that level low. But right now, we are not in the pandemic phase in this country. Pandemic means a widespread throughout the world infection that spreads rapidly among people. So if you look at the global situation, there's no doubt this pandemic is still ongoing.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy. Good to be with you.
Now, Dr. Fauci takes painstaking efforts in that to make sure that he's saying it accurately. But the fact of the matter is that we never treated this like it was a full pandemic to begin with. And because this country never treated this pandemic like a pandemic, we quite honestly have no idea when we're going to have a post-COVID society, if ever. But there's still hundreds of people dying every day. And with every new infection brings the new possibility of a new variant. We have more variants than we can keep up with at this point. So it is very incumbent upon us to not let our guards down, especially because of how the data has been changed and how the reporting on the data has been adjusted. I just want to encourage everyone to please still get the shot. Please mask up and social distance, especially if you're in a situation like my family. We have kids. We have a child who is too young to get the first vaccination. And I can't imagine for families all over this country who are dealing with immunocompromised systems and immunocompromised children, just situations where this country has completely abandoned us and we're on our own. And while Dr. Fauci is saying we're out of the pandemic phase, 3 out of 4 children have been infected with COVID-19. I do believe that we have to keep our guards up as much as possible. One last story before we go to a break. Russia's Gazprom pipeline company cuts off gas supply to Poland and Bulgaria. Now, this is amid the ongoing crisis between Russia and the Ukraine. The preeminent state-run energy company in Russia will not supply resources to the nations of Poland and Bulgaria until the payments are made in Russian currency. The Russian natural gas, Russian natural gas is a staple of the EU's energy needs. Both Poland and Bulgaria are heavily reliant on Gazprom's natural gas. Poland's climate minister said the following and said there will be no shortage of Polish homes. Polish officials cite sufficient reserves and say they may purchase gas elsewhere. Ukrainian officials refer to the move as Russia gas blackmailing Europe. Russia is completely and totally dependent on their oil economy, on their gas economy. And so absolutely, as they're facing these economic sanctions where their money is no good in the international order, it makes sense that they now have to do this to force other countries who are dependent on their oil supply and their gas supply to acquiesce by paying them in dollars that they can spend in their economy. The fact of the matter is that this entire fiasco, this entire regime change that is being attempted by Vladimir Putin in Ukraine is over gas pipelines. Nord Stream 2, which is connected to the Gazprom company that is pulling this shenanigan right now. They are at the core of the crisis of what is happening in Ukraine. Make no mistake about it. This has nothing to do with the internal integrity of Russia. This has nothing to do with the internal security of Russia. It has everything to do with the Nord Stream pipeline, along with this company that is now pressuring Poland and Bulgaria to pay up. This is blackmail. This is extortion, but it also shows the desperation of Vladimir Putin. While they are killing people every day in Ukraine, he's losing this war. Vladimir Putin is losing this war not only on the battlefield, but also in the field of public opinion. And now he looks desperate. He's a small man with a huge ambition to rule this world through his own personal vision of restoring Russia back to what he believes it should be. Not what even the people of Russia believe it should be. The dissent in Russia, the left anti-war movement in Russia is standing up and being arrested, while the left anti-war so-called movement in the United States is still pushing and supporting Vladimir Putin. There's a lot happening, a lot of contorted and twisted things that are happening in the year of our Lord 2022. We're going to try to take our time to unravel as much of it as we possibly can. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will be on the clock. We'll be joined by none other than State Senator Nina Turner. We'll be discussing the Economic Bill of Rights, along with Professor Harvey Kaye and Nina Turner's campaign for the 11th Congressional District in Ohio. We'll be back with more of the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show right after this brief break.